Greetings, Tempter, Tamunafu set, Hika, Siya. Greetings once again. I am Chief Min Waab, Chief of the Arawakai, Chaimas, Kumanagotes, and the Tamanaks or Tamanakos. Coming to you once again with another update. Actually, it's not update. Well, sort of the both. Questions and answers and updates. So I had a couple of questions um, with the last two videos, right? And obviously, well, I do have the time to answer them one time, so I just was waiting and accumulating till I get one question that I could incorporate, that I could use for all the to incorporate all the other questions and thus answer everything wholly. So let me just pull the question up here, the question that I thought would be able to encompass everything we're dealing with or talking about. Oh, right. Here is the question. Um, Thanks, Chief, again. This this was good. All powers to you. I have a question. It is said that we of the Americas are Hebrews, but by our indigenous ancestors never mentioned the Torah, or he just probably meant, but our indigenous ancestors never mentioned the Torah. So there's a brother here who asked this question. I told him I'll get the answer and I'll probably do a video on it as well. Right? So this question here would provide a serious gateway into explaining a couple of things and saving me to having to do a video on this topic that we're gonna get into separately. Right. So as you know, I like to deal with the words. Oh, that's the next thing. Chief Thunderbird Black Eagle always taught that the key to all the problems on the planet in terms of um how you put it by intellectual capacity in terms of understanding what was before your time. The key to doing that is language, right? And so, as he asked the question, it is said, and this is going around right now on the internet, a lot of people talking about with the Hebrews, with the Israelites, and all that type of thing. And I wouldn't necessarily agree with certain things, but they onto something, and I'll tell you where they get it from, and I'll tell you what we were taught, because my my chieftaincy is stemming from elders who was before me, and I had to learn from them, and so on and so forth. So what I learned, I will be imparting on you here to answer this question. So as I said, what he taught was the key to everything is in language. So Hebrews, right? So Hebrew is actually not a Hebrew word. Like, that kind of funny. Um, One second here. Okay, boom. Right. So here we have, wait 1 second. Kind of operated too. Right. So here we have. This one. Just trying to get this up bit. Right. So right. Here we have the word that it was developed from, right? If you could look at this is coming from the Strong's Dictionary. The Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, Hebrew and Chaldean, right? And this here, Strong's number 5,680, 5,681, and 5,677 would be all relating to the word Hebrew. So let's go. 5,680, Ibri, right? Ibriy, Ibri, right? One second. Right. So, right, Ibri, patron or patronative, I think is the short for it. One second. Ovo, right, so it's basically ovo relating to male. It's patronative, or patronymic, right? Patronymic. So ovo relating to the male. From 5,000, so you'd see here from two patriarchs, right? From 5,677 and Eberite. And you'd see here in parentheses, in brackets, you'd see here, i.e., that is Hebrew, right? So the question the brother asked was, he hearing a lot of us being called Hebrew, right? And our ancestors never mentioned the Torah, right? Obviously, the Torah is synonymous with the Hebrew people, or be going. So I don't want to jump what we're getting into. But right, basically, this is what it's saying here. So he's actually asking about Hebrew, right? And if you go to 5, so this is how you use the Strongs on the. If you go to 5,677 on top here, you'd see Aber, right? That's actually the pronunciation for it. Aber, the same as 5,676. That's the one higher up. All right, we'll get it just now. The name of two patriarchs and 4 Israel, Eba or Heba. Let me get to the next one. Right, there's the one on top, 5,676. Aber from 5,674. That's higher up. A region across, but used only as an adverb, right? With or without a preposition, in brackets. On the opposite side, that's the next meaning, especially of the Jordan, usually mean the east, on the opposite side of the east, that is the west, right? Times against, or beyond, or by, times from, coming from somewhere to the next place, over, leaving from here and going over there, passage, quarter, in parentheses again, other, this, other side, or this side, or straight, right? So, this, the root of this, you would see, is the 5,700 and just now. Let me see if I got to 5,700 674. Where 674, right? So it is from this word here, right? 5,674, as we read earlier. It says Orbar. This is a primary, P-R-I-M would be primary, short for primary, or primitive, sorry. Primitive, right? And it's the primitive form of the word, or the root, right? And it says to cross over, right? That's just the first point of the meaning. And we following on semicolon, used very widely of any transition, literally or figuratively, right? Transition, in transition. One second. intensive, right? That the INT, so just for the just to explain everything what we're seeing on the screen here to people who wouldn't be familiar with how to use our Strongs, right? So the intense here is for intensive or internal. So this here is for intensive, right? Or causative, right? I think that's what that is. CAU. Right, causative, right? SPEC. Where we going? Just bear with me. So this is how we are operated. Specially or special, right? Specific or specially, right? Specially to cover in copulation, right? So go over in copulation, meaning to have sex, right? Then alienate, alter. All this is the actual meaning of the word Hebrew. This is the root word and the root meaning for the word Hebrew, right? Times at all, beyond. Bring, in brackets, over or through, right? Carry over, in brackets, over, come, or on over, come on over. Conduct, over, in brackets again. Convey, over. Current, deliver, do away, enter, escape. Fail, gender, get over. Make to go, make go, away, beyond, by, in brackets, from away, forth, his way, in, on, over, through, close brackets, comma, have away, which is more, have away, more in brackets, lay, meddle, lay, comma, sorry, meddle, overrun, make partition, right? In brackets, cause to give, make to, over, close brackets. Pass, in brackets again, age or passage, pass along, pass away, pass beyond, and that's how we're reading the word after the brackets, that's how we're reading the sentence, right? Passenger, or pass on, pass out, pass over, pass through. Cause to, in brackets, after comma, cause to, comma, make, close brackets. Plus, proclaim, in brackets, amation, proclamation, comma, perish, provoke to anger, put away, rage, plus raiser of taxes, remove, send over, set apart, plus shave, comma, cause to, in brackets, make, or cause to sound, cause to make a sound, times speedily, times sweat or sweet smelling, comma, take away, away in brackets, comma, in brackets again, make to transgress, right? Or translate, turn away, right? Way in standard brackets, faring man, a wayfaring man, right? Be rather wayfaring man, a man like a traveler, right? Be wrath. So basically, the prime or the primitive root word of the word Ibre, which came from Iba, which they used to say Hebrew, right? The root of that word is Orbar, and it says to cross over. We could use all the rest and follow. I read all the rest, but let me start with to cross over. So, Chief, are we Hebrews in the true sense of the word Hebrew? And this would tell you those of us who in the Americas, because remember I say away from east, right? One of the meanings is away from east. So away from east, on the other side of east is west, right? So those who crossed over and came to the west, right? Again, in this context where this terminology was used, or first used as in a biblical terminology, and it was speaking of, how we call him? It was speaking of, I think Abraham in their Bible, in the King James Version of their Bible. The first time this word was used, I think is in that actually Hebrew, right, was in that King James Version, and it was saying of Abraham that he was, and Abraham was from Ur of Chaldea, right? Now, before I go any further, now I know we have a lot of modern minds around, and as I said before in other videos, 15 minutes is the longest they could go. Right, this video, for the purpose of the video, it can't be done in 15 minutes. So you could watch it in 15 minutes parts, but this must be done like this, extensively, exhaustively, so that people could understand what they're actually saying. Because this running around the indigenous become a trend now, as I said before, and it's running, people just pulling things out of thin air and running with it and going with it, and no real direction. These things were taught in schools, right? Languages and all these type of thing. So basically, Hebrew is Obar, and it means to cross over. So speaking of anybody who has that title, it means someone who crossed over. In their Bible, in the King James versions, it states they cross over the Tigris Euphrates. Now, you could go look up and see where the Tigris Euphrates is, right? And if Abraham, according to them Bible, was from Ur of Chaldea, right, then it would be speaking about those people who from that side of the planet crossed over the Tigris Euphrates and came to this side, right? And also it would be, all right, we can't go into all that depth, but the planet was once one at one point in time, right? And they had a whole total different setup, whole total different concept, locations, east, west, and that type of thing, right? So this is what that was referring to. Now, Chaldea is a place in what they call in today modern day, where the Middle East is today, right? Syria, Iraq, Iran, and all those places there. Them is new borders, but that place in that zone was called Mesopotamia, I think, back then, yeah. And it had other names before that, Shinar and all them type of thing, right? But basically, this place Chaldea, somewhere around in the Middle East, there's a place in there that is called Ur, right? And the root word on top, as you'd see here, so let's go to 217. 217 and 218 is UWR, pronounced Ur, right? And it says from 217, from 215, this one on top here, with the OWR, Or, or how's they have here as it pronounced Ore, or Ore, right? So 217 Ur, from 215, it means flame. Hence, in plural, the east as being the region of light or fire, right? See also 230, 224. So this just gives us a reference, and probably I could jump into 224 and just give you a read from here because I have it on my lap right here, right? Ur, the same as 217. Ur, a place in Chaldea, right? So we go back up to the root word now, Ur, or Ore, a primary or primitive root, and it means to be luminous. And in bracket it says cause or make, also to cause or to make luminous, all right, literally and metaphorically. Times break of day, times glorious, right? So that you see in the biblical script and title here, they said it was a glorious day and that type of thing, right? Kindle, that's to make, make fire, like fire. Oh, all right. So I jump the gun here, but in bracket it says be, en, give, show, light. So to enlight, to be light. You understand? To give light or to show light, or lightened, or lighten, or as underlined here, set on fire, shine. Right. In our tribal law, LORE, they talk about beings who worship fire, right? And they were from Chaldea. And Chaldea, I'm trying to get the meaning of Chaldea here, but I'll go to the next text, right? Because it's not in here, funny enough. It's Chaldee, right? It means place of demons. So in your Bible, it says, and Abraham was from Ur of Chaldea. He was a fire worshipper from the place of fire where there are demons. So if you're from that place, then it stands to reason that he was one. Good. And we go in. So here, so the Hebrews is the ones who came over from Chaldea, across the Tigris Euphrates, in and over to the west, right? And just like I told you in a couple of videos before, to mix into the bloodlines, right? And we just touch into our next part of questions. Everybody else who asks any other questions, you'll see when I pull this up here now, you'd see answering everybody questions. At one point in time, I said to you that before all this get hype up and all that type of thing, at one point in time, I said to you that the invaders who came to this place were swarthy, woolly-head people. Swarthy was just the terminology for black. Nowadays it's black. Long time in them time and it was swarthy, right? Swarthy colonizers. In our tribal LORE, we know them as black devils, right? These beings are the ones are responsible for invading indigenous people lands. Carbon recessive people were not around yet, right? The population on the planet wasn't going through the disease called carbon recessiveness as yet. So, quote unquote, what they call in white people, they're not actually white, right? Because white is a commercial term, just like black is a commercial term, right? You could go and check up your SF-181 form and you'd see the definition for black and white under the commercial terminology, right? And then so they're not actually white, according to their own definition of white, which is any person having origins in the Middle East, any of the original peoples belonging to the Middle East, Europe, North Africa, and Haiti, original people, i.e. people like me. That's who they're calling commercially white, right? I wonder if I could pull the internet from here. Let me just pull this up and show you. Boom, boom, boom. SF-181. Right. It's a commercial term. Look at this. Look to the bottom here. Right? You'd see down here it says 42 USC section 2008-16. So this is a legal form. Look at the definition for white. A person having origins in any of the original people of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. Right? Those original peoples there does not have carbon recessiveness. Right? And look at the definition for black or African American. A person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. I want someone in the audience to name for me one black racial group in Africa, right? And while you're looking for your answer, look for your coffin same time, because you're not going to be able to come up with an answer before you die, right? Because there is no answer, because there is no such thing as a black racial group in Africa, right? So get this. The people who did saying was invading was quote unquote white people, and then I came out, lo and behold, oh no, was people with heavy carbon, woolly hair, right? And people say I was mad, people say all kind of thing, right? Now we're gonna give you first-hand genealogy background of these people. We're gonna point out to you who they are, right? And then you're going to figure out, those of you who are on this land who feel so connected to Africa, and those of you who feel so much, and those of you who could carry your heritage from Africa, those of you who could connect it wouldn't even come out and say it out in the open, because I'm going to tell you who the Africans here are. The Africans here are actually the colonizers, the black devils, the ones who came from running from the Spanish Inquisition, who were run out of North Africa first and were going under the name the Etruscan Moors. Go check them out, Etruscan Moors. They used to eat little children, drink the blood, and raid village and whole village. They used to stand all 16, 15 feet, all 17, 18 feet tall. These are the guys and them that was run out of the place, right? These are the ones who are, and their descendants, these are the ones who were the invaders. Those are the ones who was colonizing people's lands. And as I say before, Ferdinand and Isabel, all of them was involved, because all of them is a part of the bloodline. Those who from Chaldea or Bar, right, came across, right, who they call in Hebrew in this day and time. So it's not a good thing to have a Hebrew in your bloodline, as you're understanding now, right? So to back up this second-hand, me being the second-hand information, and to go to first-hand information, right? So we now point out to you what white is, so they definitely could not be white, and there is no, if you're stating a black, it means you have no existence, right? Oh yeah, let me just point that out. If you are stating that you are black, it means you have zero existence. In 1856 over to in 1857, Justice Taney ruled that a white man, there is no rights that a black man has that a white man is bound to respect. That was a Supreme Court decision, and to date in 2026 GC Gregorian calendar, it has not been overturned. So if you are black or African American, they are not bound to respect anything about you. It means you are civilitas mortus, dead in the eyes of the law, right? That's just, as again, every time I talk about a topic, it always connected to our next topic, so I digress a bit and come back on topic, but bear with me, this is how the thing go, right? So watch this. So we coming out from here now, and we dealing with those who cross over and those who invaded. In our text, we have had beings, namely, on this side of the fence, they were called conversos and moriscos, right? These invaders, as I said before, were Swarthy woolly-head people. They came across as crypto-Muslims and crypto-Jews, as we're going to go through here, right? I saw the brother who introduced me to this channel to get these books in them. I saw him pull the book up sometime yesterday on YouTube. There's a YouTuber called Kermeo Ahau. You can check him out. He has a lot of info on this type of stuff, right? We have our difference in concepts based on a lot of different things, but this is where I get the information from. I saw him pull it back up, and then I remember this would be pertaining to the question. So I'll go right into it, right? So those who were invading indigenous people lands, right, were Swarthy woolly-head people. It's the same set of people I will run through after and show you on one of my TikTok videos. It's the same set of people who formed in the early 1600s, the first Swarthy nation in the West. And that was in Alubera, what they call in misnomer Tobago. The first black, the first Swarthy, the first colonizers nation ever to set up in the West was done in Alubera, right? As a matter of fact, while on the topic, let me run through it quick, as are the internet Boom, I'm gonna go on my TikTok page and just show you fast. Right? Um okay, something went wrong. Refresh, let's see. Okay, here goes. Right, as I was telling about, these are the conversos and the moriscos. This video here, the first free Swarthy peoples on the planet was in 1639 to 1693, right? And they would tell you here, right, and this is in the same book that I'm reading now, that we're going to touch now. They would tell you here that they set this up in 1639 to 1693, and these were the Moranos, the Colanders, the Zealanders, the Huguenots, the Germans. There's a whole clip of them that set up in Tobago, what they call in Tobago, in Alubera, right? Boom. So let's come out of that. Right, I'm going to just go over the first part of the book, or the introduction. You're going to hear some last names called, right? And you are going to see the reason, in my humble opinion, for why crime is so easy to trigger on this land in terms of people looking similar, killing one another. You'd see why it's so easy for it to happen. It's because the colonizers never went anywhere. They just infiltrate. But I want to get it for people down on the levels. Everybody's supposed to know what infiltrate mean, right? Right. So they bury themselves into the bloodline by having sex and having children with the original bloodline, basically, right? They carry last names that you're gonna hear popping up and that you're familiar to on this land. These are your politicians. These are your proud police officers. These are your proud servicemen. All of them have these last names. And you'd understand why when we try to rally the indigenous and wake them up is because they have so much mixtures of these Swarthy black devils in the bloodline. That's why they cannot respond. And that's why they love the corporation and uphold the corporation and will come and destroy you for pointing out the fallacy and the falsehood and all right, and the illegitimacy of the corporation, the how not valid it is, how not real it is, right? These are the same people who defend that. Listen to the last names. So as I say, we ain't no friend out here. We ain't come out here to mince no words. We in business who vex. You hear your last name here, one or two things. Either you side with the man and them would just drink blood and eat little children on them and continue and come out in the open, or you seek to find the indigenous and compensate for the whole bloodline that come down the road to cause the thing to be how it is now. Right? It's just, that's how it is. That's just the reality. You of us, that is your bloodline. Right? Your bloodline coming from people who were the most nefarious people on the planet. The first set of evil people on the planet were Swarthy woolly-haired people. Everybody else who evil learned from them. Right? Let me go through and get the last names. Right. So this is Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. Right? This was done by a sister called Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman, this is her here, and Donald N. Yates. Funny thing about Elizabeth Hirschman. Hirschman is one of the names in these books, and she is bold enough to own her Dirty Moor ancestry, and she was wise enough to team up with Mr. Yates and put this out there, so those of us who thinking that the person next to you who look like you is somehow in the same interest and same bloodline as you, you'll be aware of that. So kudos to her. Even though she carries the Dirty Moor bloodline, she's still doing some good. And this is what I'm saying. You could compensate for this. Because no one agrees today. Let me get this straight. No one agrees today that people should just get up and go take over people's places, kill out a couple of them, force them to follow the spiritual way of life and teachings and languages and adaptations. Right? Nobody today agrees on that. Even though men like Trump and things still doing it, nobody wholeheartedly, outrightly agrees that that should be going on. We all agree that that is wrong. Right? But the mere fact that we have Islam and Christianity around today is it came by way of that, by way of people raping people, people killing people, people invading people's land, and people forcibly forcing alien doctrine down other people's throats. That, and it still exists. Christianity and Islam still exist today. And meanwhile, these people who are members of that today would play that they're also holy and also righteous when the very nature, the existence of the religion they follow is bloodshed. Make that make sense, right? And not me saying it. I tell all you already, I was born the other day in the 80s, right? These things was written before my time. These people existed before my time. I just, again, using the weapon and calling it out. Because it's high time now somebody say something about it, because these clowns keep continuing to trick people, fool people, and then we are bandwagonists jumping on indigenous concepts and way of life in order to build some sort of hype or create something about itself of likes or some type of nonsense, and they're very much dirty more bloodline, right? So we had to point these things out, cut and clear, right? There we go. Uvex loss. That is what we say here. Right, so this was published in 2014. Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman. Oh, as I was saying about Hirschman, you'd see right here. Hirschman became Harris, right? Hirschman and them was responsible for one bag of evil, and they changed the name under the crypto ideology to Harris. We are plenty Harris right here on the island. So once your name is Harris, you belong to the invaders, the colonizers, you belong to that group of people, right? It's up to you to do what you want to do now with that information, right? So Jews and Muslims in British colonial America, May 2012, right? This is a genealogy study by also by Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman and Donald Yates. When Scotland was Jewish, DNA evidence, archaeology, analysis of migrations, and public family records show 12th century Semitic roots. That's McFarlane in 2007. And this DNA evidence he's talking about is ethnic DNA evidence where they directly corroborating it from one member of the family to another direct relative. This is not ancestry.com. This is not that nonsense. Right? Okay. Let's go. I'd be hard to be on camera and, unless I get this small. Right? Okay. Let's see how close I could put it up. Get it small so I'd rather be switching back and forth. Alright, get this here down to one page. Boom. Bring it over here and adjust my camera here. Good. Okay, good. So we're going. Jews and Muslims in British colonial America, a genealogical history, right? Elizabeth Caldwell Hirschman and Donald N. Yates. Okay. Library of Congress catalog and publication data. Hirschman Elizabeth Caldwell, 1949, Jews and Muslims in the British colonial genealogical history / right? Everything, there's the number, the ISBN number, everything there, right? Soft cover, these are on soft cover here, right? Boom, and they have their disclaimer and what have you. Right. Let's go quickly. Alright, so let's go again here. Okay. Alright, so this table of contents. And okay. Oh yeah. Back. You know what? Forget the on screen. I want this big. Right. This is the preface. Obviously, some things that they say in here would be kind of different to how I would relate things, but let's just go through the preface. All right. For most Americans, the story of their nation's origin seems safe, reliable, and comforting. We were taught from elementary school that the United States was created by a group of brave, white Christians drawn largely from England who ventured to these shores in search of religious freedom and the opportunity to fulfill their own destiny. Recent revisions to this idealized and idyllic narrative have never seriously questioned its basic tenets. So, although we now recognize some of the contributions made by Africans to America's success and feel perhaps a heightened sense of regret, remorse, and even guilt over the destruction of American native cultures or quote unquote indigenous cultures, that's what I'm saying with our different terminology, right? We never have had much reason to doubt the basic premise of the story that is white people who do this and that and the other. Our founding mothers and fathers were white, Christian, and British, right? That's what it told you, right? In this work, we present a series of colonial documents, contemporary first. So this is first-hand accounts. People who was there, eyewitness accounts, in other words, then, right? Contemporary first-hand accounts, records, portraits, family genealogies, most importantly, and ethnic DNA, as I was saying before when they said DNA testing, test results which fundamentally challenge the national storyline depicting America's first settlers as white, British, and Christian. They weren't white, they weren't British, and they weren't Christian, right? Or the type of Christian they want you to believe in. The ones that that people think don't drink blood, children blood, and eat children flesh and that type of thing. They want you to think that there is not that type of Christian. Well, let's go. In this work, we present a series of right. So we postulate that many of the initial colonists were of Sephardic, Jewish, and Muslim Moorish ancestry. When they state in Sephardic here, they're speaking about the Sephardim, right? Those with melanin in carbon in the system, in the skin, right? Of Sephardic Jewish, the Ashkenazis are those who call themselves Jews and are not, and we recognize the folly, right? Just like it states in the Bible about the God. We in the position of the God, we recognize the folly. There's not Jews, right? They were inducted by these Sephardins, right, into Jewry, right? Usually arriving as crypto-Jews with their religious adherents disguised, and crypto-Muslims. These migrants served in prominent economic, political, financial, and social positions in all of the original colonies. Not one, not two, all the original colonies. They were the prominent economic, political, financial, and social people. The evidence in support of this radical new narrative begins with an examination of the British colonial companies organized in England to bring settlers to North America and exploit the natural riches believed to be there. Of course, both Spain and France had already made forays into North America, founding St. Augustine and exploring parts of the coastline as far as Newfoundland, though their activities as foreign powers are given short shrift in our Anglo-centric version of the birth of America. So in the Anglo-centric version, they give them a short stint. Meanwhile, in the reality of the matter, these Jewish Muslim Moors was like the bigger part of the, as a matter of fact, the reason for the whole scene. You'll find out just now. Boom, boom, boom. Where are we? Right. Of course. Oh, one back. Of course, what is even less frequently mentioned regarding these Spanish and French settlements and voyages is that many of the colonists and sailors were of Sephardic, Jewish, and Muslim Moorish descent. Yeah, hear me? Several of those aboard Christopher Columbus's first voyage in 1492, and famously even Columbus, in brackets, colon, like I told you, himself were of Jewish ancestry. They were Jews or crypto-Jews, right? One historian of Inquisitional Spain and biographer of Christopher Columbus, Simon Wiesenthal, notes that throughout the 16th century, the movement of the Marranos of the New World had continued, and that after the expulsion of the Jews and flight of the Marrano element, it was the turn of the Moriscos, those who came here, to serve as scapegoats for the ills of the society. The same writer estimates that, all told, Spain lost 1.5 million people as a consequence of the purification of its Jewish, of Jews and Moors, right? So they actually lose that amount, a third of the population, it says. Half a million people, right? 500,000 people. That's what it said, 500,000, right? As a consequence of the purification of its population of Jews and Moors. And you see how they have them together, right? Many occupations were virtually abandoned, he writes. Trade, the crafts, and the sciences languished. Moreover, after they abandoned them, these are the things that sort of fall in Spain. These are facets of society. Trying to put things, break things down on a low level is be kind of tough when I'm fluent. But every arm of society, like linguistics, sciences, arts, and all that sort of fall when they run the Spanish Inquisition and they run the Jews and the Moors. All these things sort of fall because they were upholding these things, right? As dirty as they was. The trade, the crafts, and the sciences languish. Moreover, since these branches of endeavor had been the domain of Jews and Moriscos, they had become in themselves suspect, right? Because people didn't want to do it because it's the branches that they came out with or came forward with. Spaniards had to be extremely careful about entering any of these fields, right? Spanish life as a whole was the worse for these injustices. Spain was swamped with fortune hunters from all parts of Europe, but they could not revive the Spanish economy. Just as the irrigation canals dug by the Moors in Andalusia, that's an old name for Spain, right, were allowed to silt up, so the very channels on which the country's health depended fell into neglect. We document that Spain's loss was Britain's gain, because after they were run out of Spain, they went to, we'll hear it. Beginning with the initial planning, organization, and promotion of the first British colonial efforts, Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moors were present as navigators, ship captains, sailors, metallurgists, cartographers, financiers, and colonists. They were the colonizers. Among these we find Joaquin Gans, Simon Ferdinando, Walter Raleigh. This picture that they pull up every time you type in Walter Raleigh on the internet and they show you this pale skinned guy, that is a big farce. That's a lie. He was of Jewish and Muslim Moorish ancestry or descent, right? Walter Raleigh, John Hawkins, right? And this guy, Kermio Ahau, actually trace some living being in the north ancestry direct back to Francis Drake, right? Like literal somebody who appearing like us is a direct descendant of the Dirty Moor Francis Drake, the colonizer Francis Drake, right? So that's how real it is. So Humphrey Gilbert, everybody with it are people on this land with the last name Gilbert. You are related to these crypto-Muslim and crypto-Jews who were part of the colonization. Hence why you have your name Gilbert. It did not come from a carbon recessive guy, as they was telling you long time that you have quote-unquote white man last name. They take away a quote-unquote so-called African name and give a quote-unquote white man last name. All rubbish. These guys were coming from the North Africa and Spain and coming across here. So those were the Africans, and those of you who had the last name didn't get it from slavery. You got it by ancestry because your ancestors were the killers, the colonizers, the rapists, the pillagers. So Gilbert, you are here on the land too as well. Richard Hakluyt Sr. and Jr. Hakluyt again, everybody know the Hakluyts, right? Raping and pillaging and one set of indigenous artifacts and calling it their own, right? And we see Francis Drake, and we have Martin Frobisher, right? And Abraham Ortelius. We have people on the land with Ortelius as the last name too. Looking black like that, because them black, right? Because them have no place on this side of the land, basically the invaders, the invaders. Because everybody now up to date, more or less mixing. Right? So the invaders have no place, and so they literally black would apply to them. Right? So they could call themselves black. We are the copper tone indigenous. Right? Anyhow, we're not the road. So the first and second British colonies in North America, Virginia, Massachusetts, were provisioned, funded, and peopled by persons of Sephardic, Jewish, and Muslim Moorish descent. They are still there today. Some of them talking tribe this and tribe that, and that's the ancestry, right? Some of them actually doing same dirty more actions and figure we don't know who they are, right? Because as much as they changed the name to some indigenous appellation, we know what handle the corporate handle was, the slave name was, right? And so that's the reason why they would be portray a certain type of behavior. That is the reason why on the streets, in a simple block line, men right on the same area will war one another. Because the ancestors was warring one another. They just happen to be living in the same place because the invaders absorbed themselves onto the land of the owners of the land, and they now living side by side. Some of you have children with them. I had to say me too. Some of us have children with them. Some of us lie down and sleep next to them. Some of us have them as best friends, and they carry the dirtiest of genetics on the planet. And most times they portray disagreeable actions. Most times, right? So there in itself is one of the reasons why you can't really solve crime from that perspective. You was because you see a man sit down here and just see a man pass by. I don't like that man heading there. He don't know the man. Probably never see the man before, and well, you just now see the man and just do like the man just so. It's not that he crazy, it's not that something wrong with him, it's actually something right with him, because the vibes of the genetics, they're still at war. Because if you think we are at peace, something wrong with your brain again, right? So it's still at war, and so this is what playing out here, and the powers that were, right? They played on that in order to have control over the masses. Hence the reason why in times like 1845 they went and bring other genetics in order to mix down again, in order to dumb down the product or the children of this. Because remember, in 1797, as I showed the Gazette in one of my videos again, in 1797, Elizabeth II reserved this island as the island of experiment, right? Nobody to date come up with whatever experiment she was talking about. Soon after that, 48 years later, she bring across the Hindu population, right? And now we fast forward today. So we have a whole heap of bloodlines mixing right here. And they like to say, this island is a melting pot of Kalalu. Always nice, this and this. Is a illusion they sold you. Because as all the election come, and this party went over this party, you see the racialness going over the media. You understand? When I used to work corporate, after election time, we on work. Boom, and we rock back breathing. And a Hindu doctor would stand up and say that she wishes that they bomb the whole of the Beatum, because if it wasn't for them and the voter pardon, they would have never win or beat out the last, whatever the election was at that point in time. So there's a big illusion of unity. A very big illusion. Carnival could cause that, right? And obviously the backdrop of what the island on the 62 years of the corporation, it was a party mindset to build them on. So it have a false ideology of unity when really and truly they divided. They're more divided than could really be. You understand? I wouldn't use the analogy, but yeah, they're very divided, right? So it's an illusion. Okay, let's go. Bam. So we document that Spain's loss, and I keep drifting again, was Britain's gain, beginning with the initial planning, organization and promotion of the first British colonial efforts. Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moors. Oh, I'm going back to read what I read before. Skip all that. So we reach by Ortelius. The first and second British colonies in North America, Virginia and Massachusetts, right, they were peopled by these people. Current genetic geological studies of the Appalachian descendants of those early colonists demonstrate that they carry DNA haplotypes, male or female lineages, and genes from Sephardic, Ottoman, and North African founders. Further, these early North American colonists often bore straightforwardly Jewish and Muslim surnames. Attested are Ali with the A-L-L-E-E, right? Alif, Sarrazin, Moises, or it turned to Moses. Down here we are a whole heap of people with the last name Moses, right? Bagsel, Hagara, Okosan, and even Saladin, right? So it's not no big scholar or some prophet or whatever. It's actually conquerors and murderers they're speaking to you about when they're telling you about these people in the religion, right? Indeed, given the patently non-Christian background of so many settlers up and down the Atlantic coastline of the American colonies, it becomes difficult to ignore the significant declarations of religious tolerance inscribed in the U.S. Constitution. Easter egg in the U.S. Constitution. Even and particularly New York, founded by the Dutch as New Amsterdam. Right? It was New Amsterdam before it was New York. Right? From the York and... Alright, let me drift off. Right? So, boom, boom, boom. Right, New Amsterdam was heavily peopled by Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moors. The presence of persons from these ethnic affiliations on the governing boards of the Dutch West and East India companies is no accident. Sorry. They included Jonathan Cohen, or Cohen, we still have Cohen down here. It included, and also Cornelius Spielman, another classic Jewish name. I think we have Spielman down here as well. Other New Amsterdam and later New York residents were Jacob, Abrahamson, because we are real Jacob and Jacobs here, like stupidness, right? No wonder why they want to tell you the indigenous die out, because a whole heap of invaders just settle here, right? And I will tell you what again, it's because of the bloodlines, and this is why today they still are wrong with certain last names looking indigenous, and they're not looking like Africans no more, right? Because they bred into the bloodline because that was their goal in the first place, right? And you would see on the masonry when we reach there, right? Good. Cornelius Spielman, right. Where will we? Abrahamson and Dennis Isaacson, right? Isaacson or Isaacs, all those are invaders' last name. Represent contemporaneous testimony suggesting that even the leading Knickerbocker families of the New York colony, the Van Cortlands, we had Cortlanders in Alubera, the Phillipses, or the Phillips, or the Philip. It have Phillips and Phillips down here like rain as well. Van Rensselaers, right? Van Rensselaers, right? I don't think I have heard that last name down here before. Delanos and Delances, right? Were Sephardic ancestry. Just take a note of all these last names. They're right next to you. Some of you wake up next to them this morning. This fresh look at colonial American genealogies and settler lists presents for the first time in one source the Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic, and Jewish origins and meaning of more than 5,000 surnames. All again, it twisted with these people. You telling me the plan wasn't to come and embed themselves into the bloodline? Okay. The vast majority of them widely assumed before to be sturdy British families, named of ancient bearing. Many of our name etymologies plainly contradict the standard reference works. The decipherment of surname history is an evolved subject, one that can extend over centuries of transformation in several countries and require knowledge of a multitude of languages. For instance, just like I was telling you just now, the key to everything is in language. For instance, in order to understand the sea change suffered by the ancient Jewish name Phoebus to English Phillips, I just said, alright, I keep jumping the gun because obviously I read the book already. So I'll just try to be calm and just read it out and then go through the explanation, right? So bear with me. So the Jewish name Phoebus to English Phillips and Scottish Forbes and Frobisher, with stages along the way as Farabas and Ferriby and Furby. One must have an appreciation for the synthesizing religions of the Roman Empire, including the cult of Mithras, and naming Greek practices. Naming practices of Greek-speaking congregations of Jews, as well as conversion of Berber populations to Judaism, conquest of Spain by Berber arms in 710, and subsequent development of Judeo-Arab culture, not to mention the medieval French, Norman, Anglo-Saxon, and Scottish linguistic, orthographic, and social filters the surname passed through until it became enshrined in modern times as good old English Phillips. Right? So from the jump, you're seeing what's going on here. Those of you who find yourself loving how Trinidad is a proud Trini, right? And you love the corporation, and you're proud to stand up and boast about your government, be it UNC or PNM. When you check your last name, I could almost bet 1 million that it's going to come up with one of these last names. Right? Okay, let's go again. In their Dictionary of English Surnames, P.H. Rainey and R.M. Wilson derive all variations from the Greek name Philippos. Its true etymology, at least for Jews who adopted the name, was established, like many others, by the Victorian scholar Joseph Jacobs, who made so many far-reaching contributions to Jewish historical studies that he may be said to have redefined the field. The monumental Dictionary of Sephardic Surnames by Guilherme Figueiredo, Paulo Valderes, and Ana Rosa Campagnano, another indispensable guide, much relied upon by us in our investigations, has detailed entries under Phoebos, Farabo, Farabas, and even Phillips. To those in the know, Phillips was a transparently Jewish surname, a venerable one at that. Right? So what he's telling you here is, all these names on them here, right? When they compile them together, with them get a source from to write this book, they went through the compilations and people last name that they're mapping for how much and how much years, and they found the correlations to where they adopted the last name and changed it over to good old Phillips, right? So there is no Phillips really that is of original origin, then, if you understand what I'm saying, like up to date, right? It was something done by these Jews, these Sephardic Jews, these Swarthy, woolly-head Sephardic Jews, not us. Wrong side. All right. The question is often asked, why Jews change their names so much? Oh, some shattering falling. Yeah, in case you heard that noise, I was a shatter, yeah? Right. Yeah. Some Jews, where was I? Yeah, because it kind of distracted me when it fell. Boom, 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 boom. The question, no, where is it? Right. In its true etymology, at least for Jews who adopted the name, was established, like many others, by Victorian scholar Joseph Jacobs, who made some far-reaching contributions to the Jewish historical studies that he may be said to have redefined the field. In the monumental Dictionary of Sephardic Surnames by Guilherme Figueiredo, Paulo Valadares, and Ana Rosa Campagnano, another indispensable guide. Right, well, I read this already. Right. The question is often asked, right, why Jews change their name so much? Let us answer that in the words of Leon Harris, originally Hirsch, just like I was saying before I started to read, right? The author of A History of American Jewish Families, who built great department store chains like Kimball's, Neiman Marcus, and Sears. Familiar, right? He begins by acknowledging that Jews who altered their names or their surnames from Nussbaum to Norman, and from Rabinovich to Robinson, and Robinson was chosen strategically because it has an indigenous connotation to it, so they could hide themselves amongst us, because we have people like Robinson Ray G's down here and that type of thing. But Robinson is actually Rabinovich. Some dirty malls, right? And you see where that Robinson is in politics, right? Have often been made the butt of jokes and have even been characterized as betrayers of their heritage and tradition. Yo, I ain't making this up. I just jump in the gun because I read it before, but they telling you here who they are, right? These people with these last names basically are not to be trusted, right? And we ain't talking about nobody else. We're talking about people, swarthy, woolly haired people. We copper tone, but swarthy meaning black, like the screen here, right? Swarthy, woolly haired people. That's who they're talking about. These is the people you're talking about, right? Where we at? Betrayers of their heritage and tradition. That's where we at. But in fact, Harris writes, because for centuries they only had single names, and only in the past 200 years were they forced to adopt definitive family names for military conscription and tax collection purposes. They did not take seriously the names that they had assumed under duress. Many indeed gave no more thought to choosing a surname than a man might today if required to select a social security number. If that was the case for people of open Jewish descent, we can well imagine the ease with which persecuted Jews seeking to disguise their origins adopted serviceable and neutral sounding new surnames or accommodated Hebrew names like Naphtali to Hirsch, German for stag, and then to Harris. Two issues arise from the new perspective. First, how did refugee Jews and Muslims gain awareness of and access to the British colonization efforts in North America? 1. To answer this, we chronicle the significant efforts by English, Scottish, and Irish Freemasons in recruiting and protecting the identities of these non-Christian settlers. Number 9, 6 Company Road, Moruga. I see one all under the comments the other day. All the men, it's time to stop playing games. Right? You see how important part of this was? And all you have zero secrets because all of them know this. Right? Anyhow. Alright. Leaders in Freemasonry. Alright, let me go back. To answer this, we chronicle the significant efforts by English, Scottish, and Irish Freemasons in recruiting and protecting the identities of these non-Christian settlers. Leaders in Freemasonry attempted to create a safe haven for multi-ethnic peoples regardless of religious creed, much as they commit themselves today to charitable and non-sectarian international causes. Every creed and race find an equal place and may so and so bless the nation. Sound familiar? That is where they get it from, because under the crypto-Muslim and crypto-Jews is where this government or this Trinidad and Tobago was founded in 1962 after it was named by them when they was invading, coming in as the Conversos and the Moriscos. Right? Forward again. Boom. So, the second perplexing issue is given an overweening Sephardic Jewish and Muslim presence in the American colonies prior to 1776, why that version of history was not the narrative promulgated to generations of Americans in their textbook and public records. Why that wasn't promulgated? Why they keep telling us is quote unquote pale skin, what they call it, white people, right, is the ones who invade and colonize the place. Why they keep telling it that? When there is actually on record something absolutely different. Right? It goes along with the lie that you came from Africa. When it's them came from Africa as the invaders and colonizers, crypto-Muslim, crypto-Jews, and did what they did. Seen? Right. So boom, prior to 1776, why that version of the story was never made or was never promulgated and put into public records. Our present study does not support or does not purport to answer this riddle. Some of it has to do with the declining fortunes of the Ottoman civilization during these formative years of national identity, along with a shifting definition of what constituted Jewry, Judaism, Jewishness, right? Certainly, we can speculate that with the passage of the National Racial Exclusionary Act of 1790, which targeted not only persons of African and indigenous descent, but also those who were Jews, Saracens, Turks, Egyptians, and other pagan and infidel races, American families whose ancestors included persons from the now non-grata groups, again, battery, wow, from the non-grata groups decided to quietly cover up their origins, declaring themselves from that point forward to be, publicly at least, ordinary British Christian folk, effectively negating their own history, but it also serves to falsify the true nature of the American colonial experience, a lamentable legacy for all the generations who came after, including our own. And you know what? Put in the comments if you want a part 2, and then I'll go into the part 2 and call out all the names of the ones who look like us and are not us, who sit right now on this land with last names like Rowley and Charles and Augustine and all these type of things. These are the ones who were responsible for settling here after the colonization efforts failed, right? So if you want part 2, just type in the comments part 2 under the video and I'll do a part 2. If not, we just leave it like that, right? Because we know people don't like reading and they don't like to read, so that is the verdict. Right, so boom, boom, British Christian. This choice, right, a lamentable legacy, right? So I read all that. It's a whole book, right? So you could go get the book, pay for it, download it, however you get it, and go through it and see that I was not crazy for stating that the people who invaded the islands were not carbon recessive people. They were in fact carbon dominant people. The title that goes today as black goes to them. They are the Swarthy ones, the Swarthy woolly-head colonizers who raped our women, drank the blood of our children, and eat their flesh. And they continue to do that still to date, right? Under the different three-letter agencies in the North America, right? And by extension, the governments are all the governments in the Caribbean, right? From Chimaka straight down to Kairi, right? All of them are part of this global blood-drinking cult that is hell-bent on occupying indefinitely indigenous people lands and rewriting the narrative permanently. Hence the reason why they want to step into another global reset, right? So now that you have been exposed to this type of information, because I read it before, I went into it before, you could see the video on TikTok, or naturally I know I am shadow banned, so it wouldn't be viewed as it's supposed to, but even though I'm shadow banned, it still has a certain amount of views, and you can see where the shadow ban is having its effect. But basically you could go and take it in and see all these people, and them were not who they say they were, and actually somebody else, and they still live amongst you today, right? They are your politicians, they are your proud police officers, proud servicemen, right? And proud civic workers. Those carry that last name. You hear Phillips, we are plenty of that here. You could just run through the go back through the video and you see the last name, and you tell yourself, oh, that is why we have problems, right? So those of you who carry the bloodline of the devil, the black devil, and want to compensate, right? There's a lot of things you could do, right? For instance, one, you could start to aim your efforts into restoring and recovering the recovery of the indigenous people's heritage, kind of like what we're doing, right? And from there, you could start to reverse your karma, because truth be told, you're all going to get your judgment. As a matter of fact, the judgment already started, right? Hence the reason why I could come out and say all this now, right? Because it's happening all around the world. People like me standing up and saying there's not African. They do have an ounce of African drop in them. And the actual Africans was the ones who was colonizing and raping and pillaging and eating flesh and that type of nonsense, and still doing it today. So, that's the basis of the update for today, or answering the question. So, RC, I ain't calling out your whole name. RC, that should answer the fact that we are not Hebrews because we didn't cross over anywhere. We are not, or what name? I forget the word already. Yes, we are not, or bar, right? I think that's it. Just let me see if I find it. Nope. Right. Abar, right. Abar, I say Obar, yeah. So we are not Abar, RC. We are not Hebrew, right? Some of us have Hebrew blood mixed into us, most definitely. But to say that we are Hebrew is to own first, there is no such thing as a Hebrew. There is an Eber or a Eberite, right? So Hebrew is something that do exist basically, right? Such as the Hebrew language as well is called the Ashuric Syria, right? So, boom. Oh yeah. Um, there's anyhow. I'll wait for the next video for that one. So, Wadu Tamunafu said Ikasia. This is Chief Min Waab signing out. I mean, it was all over the place today, but I had to answer that question. And we are not Hebrews. We are not none of the names that they call us, and so that is the evidence for that. And you could go into it and do some more research. All right. I'll wait again for some more questions to pile up, and then come again. For now, I want to water some plants. All right. Wadu.